Welcome to the One-on-One with the Experts interview series. This series is to touch base with experts in the field of mental health to gain practical knowledge on what we can do to support our mental health and the mental health of the people around us. I'm Luke Tet, Student Wellbeing Counsellor at Buckley Park College, and I'm joined today with a very special guest, Mr. Andrew Fuller. Andrew, just to give you a background on Andrew, because he does so much, I've sort of condensed this as best I could. Andrew is a clinical psychologist and works with many schools and communities in Australia and internationally, specialising in the well-being of young people and their families. He is a fellow of the Department of Psychiatry and the Department of Learning and Educational Development at Melbourne Uni. He's an ambassador for adolescent success and Lions Wellbeing. He has written so many books to assist parents to guide their young people. His latest book, titled The A to Z of Feelings, is a must-read for anybody who's struggling. Absolutely get into that. And I've read a few of your books, Andrew, and I think they're amazing. And towards the end of this interview, we're going to go over a very special program that Andrew's looking to roll out for young people, and it's called First Responders. So make sure you watch to the end of the interview, because with our time here being as limited as it can, where you want to stay connected to the stuff that Andrew's putting out, because it's just invaluable. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today, Andrew.
Oh, Luke, it's a delight to be with you. And hi, everyone. It's great to be able to speak with you.
Yeah, you do so much around the countryside. You're traveling around and helping out schools and all those sorts of things. So I really appreciate the goal that you're about to give us. I've heard you speak a few different times before, and there were a couple of things that I think that our community could really utilize. And I know that you've discussed in the past around like what it looks like to be a treasure hunter. Would you like to sort of expand on that?
Yeah, I wrote a book in 2016 called Unlocking Your Child's Genius, which kind of got a bit misinterpreted that, somehow I thought that every child, was somehow going to be a top scoring genius. And one of the things we've forgotten is the original meaning of the word genius. So genius isn't something that we can be or aspire to. It's something we are. So there's an inner genius within all of us. And part of great work and part of great parenting and part of great teaching is to draw out the inner genius within everybody. So that requires you then to go on a treasure hunt. And to find a treasure hunt uh, in in the people that you work with, and to find that facet or that strength or that ability, and to make much of it. Because of course, what we know is that when we find that kind of real center point of strength or treasure and make much of it, there's a ripple effect into other elements of that person's well-being, and they shine. It's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like that's sort of one area that we could all sort of look towards. We spend so much time looking at deficit and looking at areas of weakness to enhance those spaces, that we forget to look at the strengths, and that I guess is the treasure. Is that what you're trying to say there?
Yes, it is. I mean, I've had the privilege of working with thousands of young people who've had really pretty awful upbringings, really. Have had everything against them. And if I think about what really heals them, what helps them to turn around the course of their lives, it's not just the removal of the nasty stuff. I mean, I'm not saying for a moment that we allow nasty stuff to endure for young people, but at the same time, that in itself isn't sufficient. It's the acquisition of the treasures, the protective factors in a person's life, and that could be a relationship, but it could also be a conversation. It could be identifying some aspects of that person that are coping and making more of them. And when you've focused your lens that way, it's a really powerful way of working with people.
Absolutely, absolutely agree with you there. And you can see it in a school, especially when you have that teacher or you have that person at school that sees that in you, and they just enhance it and bring it out in you. I love that, actually. And it's a really good way of sort of going about our lives as an adult when we're giving to kids and being around kids. I think it's really important. The I guess that really leads into the next area that I really loved hearing you speak about before, was around connect, protect, and respect. Um, I'd love for you to be able to share that with our community now, if you could.
Sure. I started out my career in psychiatric crisis teams, and so I'd be sitting with people in pretty bleak circumstances, with possibly contemplating the wrong side of the bridge, that kind of stuff, and that got me to thinking about how do I stop people getting to that point, and that then led me to doing two really large research projects on resilience. One in the sort of mid early 1990s, really, and then one later on, much more recently in the last few years. So the first one, perhaps to summarize that, was interesting because that then highlighted, both of them highlighted three critical ingredients, but they were slightly different over time. So in the first one, basically, and I think they still hold true, is that the three factors that promoted good outcomes for young people, despite the odds, were that having a sense of being loved by at least one member of your family. So even in a really sort of chaotic family, having one person who just loves you to bits and thinks you're wonderful makes a gigantic difference. Having a diversity of friendship groups. So should I fall out with this bunch, I've got this bunch to fall back on. And the third one was having an adult outside your family, which is often a teacher or coach or someone like that, who was able to look beyond the smokescreen of your behavior and say, "You're all right, Luke. You're the kind of person I like to know. Something about you. It's a glit in your eye," or whatever it was. And and that's really where that treasure hunting idea comes from. Really, it was basically that those young people were saying that adult saw something in me I couldn't see in myself at that time and made it visible to me. And it became so powerful that I began to regard those adults, without sometimes even intending to do so, as creating a gift that that young person will spend the rest of their lives unwrapping. And so then in the second wave of with 198,000 young people looking at resilience across Australia, we distilled that sort of message further into the idea that when we connect with other people, well, and when we connect with ourselves, well, the best in ourselves, when we are protective of one another, so when we feel safe and we kind of feel supported, and when we are treated in a respectful manner and we treat others in a respectful manner, we thrive. And so that then became the CPR of well-being: connect, protect, and respect. And building that into a school culture or into a family or into a relationship or into a life makes a gigantic difference. So it's connecting into the best of yourself, connecting into the best of other people, protecting the people that you care for, and the world, really treating people well. And then it's a respectful attitude towards the relationships you have.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I guess that's being putting it into that sort of acronym, CPR, keeps it really easy to maintain and into the forefront of your mind. And we do that a lot at our school at the moment, where we take that sort of approach to connect everybody to each other, which is the whole reason why we're doing these videos. But I think it's important to recognize that respect is also internal as well as external, which is kind of what you've gone over. I really love that. And
Mm.
I guess when we think about that, parents and adults alike, we factor so much into that CPR model. How can we then, as a community, build respectful, confident, and empower the young people in our lives?
I think one of the things to realize is that you have some power. And that's hard sometimes to see when you feel a bit powerless, as we all do from time to time. And that power is often as simple but as powerful as going up to somebody who's perhaps standing by themselves and saying, "Hi, Luke. My name's Andrew. How are you? What's going on?" And just taking that step of bravery, and it is a step of bravery, to go and say something to somebody who you don't especially know real well, is incredibly powerful, because of course it's not just because of course then that if that other person, because you've been scared of probably going up to somebody and saying hi, but they've been probably scared of going up and saying hi too, and so it just breaks the ice, and then suddenly you've got this kind of new friend or this new connection that is somebody you can kind of then develop that with, and that's a fantastic thing. I think we all narrow our world too much too narrowly by fear, and if we were bold, just that bold enough to take that next step to that next person and say hi, it makes an incredible difference.
Mm. And
Mm.
that's that fear-driven idea. It's absolutely in us all, isn't it? And we definitely see it from day to day with the students at our school. But I guess when we think about modeling, how does a parent or an adult overcome that fear to model that for their kids?
It's interesting. When I was a kid, one of the best bits of advice I ever got was when you go into a room, find the person who's least similar to yourself and go and say hello to them. And gee, it's been good advice. I got to tell you, the number of people I've had in really amazing conversations that otherwise I would sort of exclude because they look so different, or they're in a wheelchair, or whatever it is that kind of is a different kind of situation, or different skin color, or wearing different clothing, and it's just enriching of your life. And so it's partly just having that sense of, oh well, they're just a person, and they can either tell me to rack off and they don't want to talk to me, or they'll involve themselves in a conversation. And either way, that's okay. I'm not going to be too upset if they tell me to rack off and they're not interested in talking to me, but maybe somebody needs to give it a go. And
Mm,
so as adults, if we do that just casually in our day-to-day movement around, say, a school or a community, it's amazing how people start to respond. I mean, they might look at you a bit warily the first few times you wave at them across the shop and go, "G'day," and they go, "Who the heck's that? Do I know that guy?" But at the same time, it's kind of cool, I think, to be that person who's known a bit by everybody.
mm.
Mm,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, I really love that because it allows you to dig into the courage that we all have innately that we don't always tap into. I love that.
mm.
So tell me about first responders. What's that look like?
Well, there's been a big change in terms of thinking about well-being, and 2020 changed the world, but 2020 changed the way we think about well-being in schools, particularly. So we know that the traditional well-being programs being run in lots of schools just don't work. The outcome results are appallingly low. Sitting in a room and journaling about how grateful you are about life doesn't really cut it. I'm sorry, it just doesn't do it. Um, and so we also know we live in a time when people are heightened, they've got more distress than ever because the world's more stressful, right? The third thing that we know is that kids speak firstly to other kids about their worries, right? So I'm thinking about this, and I'm talking to my good friend Rod Duncan, who works at Brentwood, and I know Luke, you and Rod have a connection as well, which is fantastic. And so we're just talking about this and puzzling about what we can do to help. And so what we started to set up in schools was a process where we have well-being or house heads or whatever is the structure in the school, and with about 7 students we train them all up in the very simple art of how to have a helpful conversation with somebody. So it's not highfalutin it, but it's in some ways it's the very essence of good coaching, is how you have a helpful conversation. And so and and so let's say, Luke, you're in that role in the school. You would have 7 students who you've gone through the training with, so you know them pretty well. And then let's say you hear about a student, let's call her Henrietta, just because it's an unusual name. Um, and Henrietta's a bit marginalized, maybe being a bit bullied, a bit kind of unhappy at home. You might tap one of your 7 students that have been trained with you, the mental health first responders, on the shoulder and say, "Would you mind going having a chat with Henrietta and coming back to me and letting me know what the lowdown is, or bring Henrietta back if you prefer, if that would be helpful." Um, and so what you're doing then is expanding the power of well-being initiatives in the school by not by learning about it, but by doing it. And I think teenagers aren't much good at transferring knowledge, so learning about something compared to doing it is nowhere near as powerful. So just having the experience that somebody comes up and says, "Hey, what's going on for you? Are you okay? What's it been like for you? This lockdown stuff, how good, how bad? What's life been like?" is incredibly powerful. And so what we find is then the cultural network of the school strengthens, because of course suddenly you've got this kind of protective bunch of kids who are looking out for other kids. So that builds a culture of caring.
Mm, Absolutely, and it kind of ties into everything we kind of discussed here today, hasn't it? I mean, you think about, and this is sort of a plan for us too with our peer support leaders, is to get them out into the yard even and touching base with their year 7 kids that have transitioned into high school, because you're kind of expanding your network at the same time and having that trusted older person, if you like, to be around you, to be, I'm struggling with a friend, or I'm struggling with a group of people. I can go to that student who's older than me first, and then we can decipher what we need to do with it after. I really love that. And I guess the challenge has always been, how do we arm the kids with that sort of knowledge, and being able to have those conversations. And it sounds like that first responders does that. Is that right?
Yes, it does. I mean, but one of the things that I learned really early on when I was in the CAT teams and the crisis teams was that one conversation can change a life. And it's interesting about that conversation because often the conversations that change lives are not where one person has the answer for the other. In fact, I'd be sitting on that bridge going, what the hell am I going to do? I've got no idea what to say. None of my training prepared me for this. I've got no idea, right? And I'd say that to people and they'd go, oh, are you all right? I'd be I'm thinking you're the one who's in trouble here. But that actually kind of helped me out. And it was amazing how powerful it was to basically just be honest with people. And so it's not that we expect this group of people to become experts in solving problems, although sometimes they will have some useful suggestions. But I'm sure Luke, in your own life, that sometimes it's just having a conversation and you walk away from it. And it's either that you suddenly think differently, not that anything's necessarily been said that's been a clear direction, or the tone and the emotional feel of the conversation is one where you feel there's someone on your side enough for you to think differently about yourself. And that's an incredibly powerful and I think a lovely human process. If we just reduce helpful conversations just to the words that are said, we're missing a major part of our humanity and our connectedness. And really, that comes back to connect, protect, and respect. So when you really are in the presence of somebody who's connecting with you, who's protective of you and respecting of you, it empowers people and it brings up possibilities that probably not even they're aware of in you.
Absolutely. I really, that's a really cool story that you just shared there, because you kind of, when you're sitting there with that person and you're going, I'm struggling too, you're kind of acting out that whole and connecting to that whole, we're both caring for each other, we're both here for each other. I really love that, and then 100% respect that. It's such an easy process that maybe gets a little lost, a little too complicated sometimes for some people, because, like you said, trying to solve their problem. They're not necessarily connecting anymore, are they?
That's right. And, maybe us psychologists are guilty of this. We try to make things more complicated than they really need to be at times. That it's okay, they can get complicated, but at the same time, the real heart of things is very simple, isn't it? It's just basically sitting there. I mean, somebody also once said to me, if you sit with somebody long enough, they'll give you the answer.
Mhm.
And I think that's true too. That basically, if you do have the time to sit with somebody and go, oh, gee, I don't know what to do about that, but let's talk about it for a bit and see what comes up. And you just sit with them long enough and they'll often come up with an answer about it, which is constructive and helpful. And I think that's much more powerful than being told what you should do, Luke, what you
Mm.
should do. you know my rescue plan for you is this and this and this, right? Okay. And I think we know how that one goes.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending so much time you have, because I know that you're limited with all the stuff that you're doing. I really appreciate the time you have spent here and the goal that you've given us. Like I said before, guys, check out uh, Andrew Fuller's website. You can access all his books and all the stuff that he's got offering there. You can reach out to him. All his details will be on the next at the end of this video. So definitely reach out, stay connected, protect and respect everybody. Absolutely. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
And Luke, I want to honor the work that you do because I think that your work in creating this and doing other things at Buckley Park and elsewhere is just remarkable. So thank you so much for what you do. And the person that you bring to that work is just wonderful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, buddy. You take care. Bye. If you would like to learn more about the amazing work Andrew does, check out the contact details on your screen now. If you would like some assistance with this process, reach out to the Wellbeing team and we can walk you through this step by step for your individual circumstances, helping you overcome some of the hurdles and roadblocks that may be in place blocking you from your potential. Take care and be safe.